Last week, a Utah man named Craig Robertson was shot and killed during an attempted arrest by the FBI after Robertson allegedly made violent threats against President Joe Biden ahead of his visit to the state. According to NPR, quote, while threats may target a bipartisan array of public officials, data from the last decade shows that 96% of murders in the U.S. linked to political extremism are committed by right-wing actors, end quote. Former member of the January 6th Select Committee, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff, joins us now. He's also a candidate for U.S. Senate in California. Congressman, I feel like you're one of those people who's been warning us the longest and the loudest. What do you make of this moment we find ourselves in?
Well, there is a dangerous increase in acceptance of the idea of political violence. We have seen this, I think, throughout the Trump presidency and the post-presidency. I don't think you can find a member of the January 6th committee that has had multiple threats. There have been multiple people prosecuted for threatening to kill me. It has become all too common. And more than members of Congress and more than those that have been involved in these issues, school board members are being threatened. City council members are being threatened. I remember speaking to a school board member some months ago who said she wasn't running again because she had a young family and she didn't want to put up with these death threats. Why would she want to do that? And the problem, I think, writ large is when you attack our elections, when you say that the only way you lose is if it's rigged somehow. If you can discredit our institutions to that degree, if you can attack the truth and fact sufficiently, then what is left to decide what our policies should be, who should govern? If we can't even agree on a basic set of facts, then what is left but violence to decide? And this is a hazardous path our country's never been down. We need to stop the country from moving any further in this direction. I'm afraid that probably won't happen until Donald Trump is once again defeated at the polls. But it is a very disturbing trend.
What's interesting to me, I mean, you're not the variable, right? I mean, I guess I'm old enough and have been in politics long enough to remember, you know, you're viewed as a policy expert, a national security expert, viewed as a reasonable figure by Democrats and Republicans in a pre-Trump era. Now you're one of Trump's public enemies, you know, top 10, I guess. Now that he's got a Republican primary, maybe you're in the second tier, I'm not sure. What do you think it is, right? So you're not the variable, the media, you know, what is the variable? What makes Trump supporters uniquely comfortable and accepting of political violence?
You know, I think it's a couple things. I think that, you know, for the first time, we have a major party leader who condones violence, you know, not always directly, but you know, very thinly veiled. Those who come after me, we're going after you. A lot of the rhetoric he uses in his social media posts, at his rallies, is, you know, very encouraging of this kind of attitude that violence is somehow condoned or okay or consistent with who he is. But beyond that, I think what has contributed to the sort of intense polarization is just the fact we don't get our information from the same places anymore. Social media has really magnified the extremes and in particular has allowed people who are prone to violence to find each other online and given them an organizing tool. And so I think it's changes in how we get our information, but also a party leader who has been a uniquely divisive figure and willing to sort of break all of the boundaries, all of the norms that have guided our democracy until now.
You know, I think some of it, too, is we've covered the collapse of the Republican Party. I've talked about this here as a political story. And when you look at what's been ushered in, this acceptance of political violence, a preference for Russian leaders as opposed to American leaders who happen to be registered Democrats, it is a story also of a party that now represents a threat to our national security, a threat to our ability to stand by democracies fighting American adversaries. Can that be undone? How do you unring those bells?
I think it can be undone, and I think you're right. I realized in the first year of the Trump administration something that I never thought I would contemplate, which is that the predominant threat to our democracy now came from within. That there was nothing Russia or China or North Korea could do to divide us, to tear down our institutions more than our own president of the United States had been doing. But what made that possible was the enablement of so many Republican members of Congress who went along with it. Just within the last 24 to 48 hours, we saw Kevin McCarthy once again excuse, rationalize Donald Trump's conduct, vilify yet another prosecutor for trying to hold him accountable, suggest that this was all political instead of what it is, which is justice and accountability. When someone who holds the office of Speaker tears down our institutions that way, it is what has brought us to such a fragile point. It just, I think, has revealed who so many people in office really are, what they stand for, what they truly believe in. And for all too many, it's the pursuit of power, the holding of power, the democracy be damned if necessary. It's that kind of ethic that has made things so fragile. Now, I believe that if Donald Trump is the nominee and if he loses again, as I believe he will, that the Republican Party just may decide it's finally time to part company. It's time to have a party of ideology again, a party in which someone like Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger can have a home. They won't do it necessarily for the sake of the country, it appears, but they just may do it for the sake of their party. And because attaching their wagon to Donald Trump means continuing to lose.
I don't share your optimism, but I think your political calculation could be right. I mean, there is no Senator Doug Mastriano. There is no governor. What's the wackadoo? And what's her name?
Carrie Lake.
There's no governor, Carrie Lake. But we'll debate your optimism another day. I want to ask you to stick around because I want to show you something that's new to us as a public, brand new evidence that shows Roger Stone and raises some new questions about Roger Stone and Trump and our whole understanding of the timeline for the Trump coup plot, specifically the fake electors. Don't go anywhere.